there is that one aspect of us that we just cannot see it because it's who we are in our ego. It's really the essence of our ego. And for me, it was my mother. And until we release that piece that is holding us back, we're not free. Free is a relative concept. But up till that point, we're not free. Free to be flexible. Free to be flexible in our emotions. Because most people, if I say, well, your emotions are suppressed, yeah, but not all your emotions are suppressed. It's like playing a piano. You can still play some sort of music, but there's a few keys that whenever you touch them, they go twang, because you cannot experience those particular emotions, because that's where your pain and your suffering is, and we avoid those like the plague. So those emotions are out of our awareness, and so we're dead when it comes to those emotions. We can experience other emotions, but not those particular emotions. The emotion could be laughter, could be joy, could be sadness, grief. It could even be jealousy. It could be anything. But there is a few emotions that we do not have real access to. And that is how we define our damage, that we are unable to experience those emotions because there's too much pain in there.
I think I've probably seen this most profoundly in people that have been in either had sexual abuse or rape. I've seen this in quite a few people, that this closing down, there's just a complete dead past the eyes. There's no access to quite a lot of emotions, and yet just coasting through life but not experiencing it.
I was like that. With me was being put in a boarding school, orphanage, at the age of 3, and then being transferred to another orphanage at the age of 8. So my mother leaves me. I develop a second mother with a nun who looked after me and who really loved me. And then I was taken away from her. So I just went dead. I died. So I spent a lifetime opening that door.
People talk about empathy. I've always felt quite empathic, but that's not because I've got some skill. I've learnt that, but it's because of the lack of love that I experienced with my parents, that I was paranoid, and I would pick up on their vibes but take it as my issue. So I'm constantly reading a situation because it's not normal. So I've become attuned to something. I think it's a skill, but it's actually dealing with my trauma. It's a trauma response.
Yeah. And I know some other people who are similar in that way, who to feel safe in the world, they're right out there watching, reading the runes of people's emotions, what's going on, are they in a good space today, are they not, and then as a person I'm thinking of, what this person does is tries to calm the environment down. It's as a protective mechanism.
But it's all coming from a place of fear, and you're in the fight or flight. You're activated all the time, and then that becomes normal. That fear.
Still a good skill.
True, but not to be active all the time. To be your main, filter of seeing the world.
See, I'm the opposite. I became dead to the world. So I never noticed the world. I just went totally inside my own head. And that's still true today. I focus on others when I'm on duty. Because as a therapist, so when I'm on duty, I'm totally focused on there. But if I'm just doing my own little thing, I can be quite oblivious. You know, there are some things that will stay with us for the rest of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, when I need to be, I'm there. But when I don't need to be, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm okay. You know, I'm okay with being as I am. So we're opposites in that way.
Mm.
You're always out there. I'm never out there.
But you know, conversely, because I've spent a lot of time on my own, I'm quite comfortable being on my own as well. It's always been expectations and thinking about what other people think of me and what I should be doing and how behaving. When actually, when I step away from all of that, I feel quite comfortable with myself. But it's like it's the comparison game.
You know, that's one of the lessons I learned very early on in my life, because I was very lonely. You're bound to be lonely if you're an outcast. But I was in London, I was working through Hyde Park. I must have been around 27 years old. And I noticed that my mind was working all the time about how other people would see me. You know, chicken. So I was walking through Hyde Park, and I was totally self-conscious about how other people would see me walking by myself.
Yeah.
The fact that I was alone, that I was a loser, that I had no friends, which I didn't to speak of. And I was so berating myself about this and feeling such shame, experiencing such shame. And I realized, I had a moment of lucidity when I thought, you know, all these other people walking around me, they don't care about me. They're not focusing on me. They're probably focusing on their own anxieties and fears. And that was so liberating. So liberating. I continued to be by myself as a loner for most of my life. But I stopped being bothered in what other people thought of me. Now, what mattered is what I thought of them, not what they thought of me.
Yeah. I had that too, and I had this other level of fear of being beaten up for being gay. So I had this whole period where I would analyse and get paranoid about how I stood, how I sat, how I behaved and interacted with people, because I didn't want to get abused. And then it was when I was spending time in India and in Asia, and just seeing how, you know, heterosexual men were behaving over there, much more relaxed in themselves, not worried about putting a flower behind their ear or standing in some way, or, you know, expressing some feminine qualities. That was fine, and that was an eye-opener for me. So I kind of let go of a lot of that. But for a long time, there was always this fear, and I must be passable. People must not know I'm gay, otherwise I'm going to get hit or rejected.
You know, my problem was the opposite. This is how I reasoned it to myself. For the last 3+ incarnations, I was female, and on my last one, I was gay. And I was so feminine, because I've never had a father figure. So I was so feminine in myself that I had gay guys after me all the time. And I was very good looking when I was young. I had a full head of hair in those days. I had them after me all the time. And even when Jenny and I came together, she said, I wasn't really sure if you were gay or not. Because of so many feminine traits in me. You know, but we are what we are. It doesn't matter.
But then you can see that in the other side, like how, you know, some men need to behave, like they must be the alpha male, they must project this, you know, strength. Whereas in actual fact, they probably just want to be a bit softer. So again, it's all perceptions and the optics of how we're perceived, and, you know, putting on a facade, and just not being ourselves, not being relaxed in ourselves, just that we're going to be, accepting that some people might not like us for being who we are, but that's okay. But the majority of people just don't really get it, do they?
Probably not. We don't know that, but yeah, probably not. I think people have enough problems of their own to really focus on anyone else.
Yeah.
Although you do have that proportion of people who are very critical of others, and so they're always judging other people. But that's only because they're judging themselves constantly and they found themselves one thing. So New Age movement. New Age movement. What else can we say? What are disparaging remarks can we make?
But is it a bad thing? Is it a little bit like using stabilizers on a bike to get you there? I think as long as eventually you do take the stabilizers off, however we make our way, is it a gentle way? Is the crystals and the tarots and the positive affirmations and mantras, it's a nice way to gently get into it?
No, it is. Okay, that was a bit strong. It is and it isn't. I have seen way too many spiritual people who are emotionally no different from anyone else, in the sense that they haven't cleared the decks, the emotional decks. And so what I see, and I see it all over the place, is all these people who have picked up, because of their internal pain, they're looking for answers, and they're following ways which on the surface will take you there. I mean, it could be being a Buddhist. I've seen them. But it's not real, because what's real is being ordinary. Come back to that word. But what these people do is they're searching connection with source, with spirit, with something out there.
It's always external, is it? The
It's always
outsourcing.
they're always outsourcing. Whereas the truth of real growth, we won't say the word spirituality, the truth of real growth is to get your hands dirty and reel with the mess, which means experiencing the pain, experiencing the mental conflict when we have opposing viewpoints. That's what it's all about.
Spirituality, I think, is about looking for the spaces in between things. It's a slowing down, that through that simplification and observation, we see new information.
Well, you can only slow down when you're in your heart. Okay, there's no slowing down in your head.
Yeah.
So, yes, what you say is good, but I would change that to when you're in your heart, because that is being in the heart is like being in the eye of the hurricane. It's the still place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And unless we're in that still place, we're not really seeing the world. Our mind is always putting filters on our perception. So whatever we're experiencing, or we think we're experiencing, is secondhand, is not real. Because the world as the world it has many levels, but there is the sensing, there is the kinesthetic sensation of the person or the object, and then there is the feeling where we merge with the object, but then we come back to ourselves. So we're never rigid, either here or there. whenever you, whenever me. There's always a sort of fluctuation where the experience of the world is in relation to ourselves. But we still need to be out there to bring it back into us. What we do when we're lost, confused, in pain, we cannot see the world properly, we label it. Oh yes, oh that's a blue, and that's a sort of green, and that's a sort of brown table, and yes, it's not very nice, it's this, or that could be better, it could do with a bit of cleaning, where we have this sort of wordiness running through our heads where we're judging what the world around us. Yeah, we're not simply being in the experience. And that's what when I say we're not in reality, that's what I mean. That we experience the world second-hand through our brain, through the words in our head. And the only way to bypass that is to be in the heart. That's the only time when this shuts up. And sometimes even when we're there, it still doesn't shut up. But then we don't take any notice, in the sense of it's just noise in the background. It's not the experience. Yeah. Was that a little bit too unnormal?
No, made perfect sense.
And so all these tarot cards and crystals and all of that, it's all very well. Look here, this is all from my past, Jenny's past, so we sort of, oh yes, this is for, the sixth chakra, third one, this one's for the liver, you sort of look at things, but that's not what it's at. That's not what it's about.
No accessories required.
None whatsoever.
And, meditation has been useful to me to slow things down, to get into my heart. But I'm not going to attain, and I don't need to do it. It's helped me, and I'll go back to it. But I'm not going to beat myself up if I'm not meditating every day, or if I'm not doing this every day, or if I'm not cleaning and purifying myself. For me, it's about observing my thoughts and reactions, and looking for, when stuff comes up, to actually sit with it. But other than that, that's my spiritual practice, really. Everything else I've kind of stripped away, and I feel much happier for it as well.
One caveat on that. I still sort of meditate, although really I'm doing this more now so that I can create little packages to share with other people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me refine that. I meditate every day. I lie down and I'm in a stillness, and I feel my energy moving through me, and I'm not thinking. It's an automatic process now, opposed to me. Right now, it's time to sit and meditate.
Yeah. So for me, I often sort of sit back, and what I do is I connect with my heart, and I focus on soul, and I connect with my love for soul, for my ego. Because if there is one meditation for anybody to do, for everybody to do, and this is something, because the nature of how the world is, we need to keep doing a little bit of this, is we need to keep touching base with our ego and loving ourselves. We need to feel good as to who we are.
Feel the feeling of you.
Yes. And there are times when, because we're all imperfect. There's no such thing as perfection. There's no real gurus out there. We're all in the same boat. And so there are times when new moon, full moon, events happen, I lose the plot a little bit, and then I experience emotions which I haven't processed. And so when I'm sitting there and I'm focusing on my heart, and I focus on me and I connect with my abdomen, and suddenly I'm overwhelmed with emotion and it just bursts through me. And I just go with it and I cry, and sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's poignant, and it rocks my whole body, and I just stay with it. I just ride it, and then my system settles down and I go back to my feeling of love within myself. So I clear the decks. And that is, in my opinion, the real purpose of meditation is to clear the decks. Keep clearing the decks. Sometimes you've got a lot, so good luck with that one. But even when you've got very little, we still need to keep clearing the decks, because otherwise, emotions which are unprocessed, they somatize in the body. They create tension. And so we need to continue to release, clear. We don't chase it, but by being connected with our hearts, by being open, whatever's in us will surface.
Yeah.
Just allow it to be.
And not to run away from it, or to distract yourself, or not to run away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, experience. All experiences are useful.
Yeah. Meditation has got me there. The other thing that's got me there is, being in the forest, and the other one is getting into the water. So I've noticed when I've been very stressed, and I've got, where I lived before, I just go into the burn, into the little stream, which was, from a spring. So it was ice cold every day of the year.
Wow.
And if I had fear about it, I would convince myself, because I don't want to get in the water, it's cold. But actually, it's exactly what I needed to do, because that needed to be cleared. But I was holding on to that.
Right.
And so when I get in the water, the apprehension, I might delay myself. But when I get in there, I go through that, I have that experience, it's uncomfortable, things come up, and then I get out and I feel amazing. And then I'm like, why didn't I just get in the water sooner? But there's this real resistance to what I need to do, especially with the water, less so with going in a forest or meditating. But I've done that with meditation, actually. Kind of, no, because there's part of me that's wanting to hold on to that.
I think we sort of pretty much exhausted this a little bit. I'd just like to end up with, there's quite a few people who have become convinced that the answer lies in the stars. And so they're constantly and there are charlatans out there who come back and say, I come from this planet or whatever, and I've got all these memories, and I'm now sharing, and now I'm doing very well, thank you very much. Doing all these group meetings where 100 people come out and tell them all about my life story. Yeah, I won't name names, but there's one out there who's been doing it for 30 years. And it's all bullshit. That is not where it's at. It may or may not be true.
Or it might be true for them, and they might have some kind of connection, but again, it's like if you can't get your direct connection with it, you're just believing what someone else is saying, and then you're into their program, and who knows what that is, if that is coming from the right place. I don't know.
So there's all these people, and they're desperately reaching for the stars for salvation now. If you read my stories, my blogs, my podcast, you say, don't you know that there is aliens out there? Yes, there are aliens out there. But right now, it is irrelevant. It's interesting, but it is irrelevant. Because unless we deal with the baggage inside us, unless we deal with our emotional baggage, unless we learn to experience the intensity of emotional and mental conflict, we're never going to meet them. We need to work on ourselves. Sounds a little bit harsh, that one, work on ourselves, but we need to put time into clearing the decks of what's inside us. That's what matters, that's what's important.
Yeah.
You know, aliens out there, like the true humans that I speak about, their level of soul integration is so way beyond us that you're never going to meet them. Not unless you raise your own level. And that's where we are. We need to work on ourselves. That's, I suppose if there was a message about spirituality, it would be this. That it's not about what's out there, it's what's inside us that we need to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's astronomy. It's a potentiality, but things are always going to change within that, aren't they? There's many ways. Variables.
I loved astrology when I was younger because it helped me to control my world. So that's where I did or it didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm one of those. I don't like surprises.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my wife, my children, they love surprises.
Me too.
I like to know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, I feel safer knowing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was younger, I was really into astrology for that very reason. I was always curious as to the people that came into my world and what the possible relationship between us was. The thing about astrology is that it's all about the ego. People think it's about spirit. It's not about spirit. Astrology uses the planets around us to tell us which way the world is moving and us within it. So it's giving us information about our ego, how we are perceived by other people, how we perceive other people, the sort of possible relationships and conflicts or not that's going to happen with other people. It's all about ego. It is not about soul. And people get confused. And because we live in a mechanistic universe where the gears intertwine and interact, then you can predict what's going to happen. That is why we have laws in the universe, the laws of the universe. You can predict what's going to happen to a certain extent. And that is what astrology does. It can be a predictive instrument, but only of the ego, only of the machine. Nothing to do with soul.
Yeah.
Soul doesn't need predicting. Interestingly enough, talking about astrology, my sun and moon, they're in my 11th house. And they're both conjunct. Sorry, in my 12th house. And they're both conjunct. And they say, you know, that when they're in that place, in the 12th house, at that location, conjunct like that, they say that my interest, my focus is all about the opening of the subconscious. The 12th house is the subconscious. So it's all about that focus on the subconscious. And sure enough, it's true. It's always been my interest. And the complete cycle is 72 years. So by the time it reaches 72, I will begin a new cycle. And right on my ascendant, which is in Cancer, which is water, I've got Gemini and Jupiter conjunct. Which means the first house is the house of how other people see you, which other people will see me as being bigger than life. Yeah, they will think that I'm something special, which I'm not. But they, you know, because of what I'm doing, give it a couple of years, and people will think that I have some sort of answer, which I haven't, because I'm just ordinary.
Yeah.
But this is how people will perceive me. And because I also happen to have Venus 10 degrees into my new house, then people will just like me, because Venus is a very likable planet. And because I've also got Uranus there. There's that sort of like spontaneity and different things coming through. But all of this is not who I am. It's how I will be perceived by others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's all about ego. You know, it's
Yeah. That was quite a good bit. Are you going to weave that in?
I might do.
I think you should. Yeah. Oh, here's another one though. So we've got the body, we've got the ego, we've got the soul. What's this spirit bit they talk about? Because that's just never resonated with me.
There is no spirit.
Mm.
I'm talking out of my head at the moment. There is soul. You see, we've created this really complex view of reality. Well, you've got the Christian view, which was fairly simple and straightforward, right? You know, we've got a soul, and we've got one life, and we're born in sin, and when we die, we will either go to heaven or hell, depending on whether we've been forgiven or not. This is why the last rites are so important, you know. Be forgiven so you can go to heaven at the very last moment. It doesn't matter what a shit person you've been, but if you get the last rites, you go to heaven, as long as you repent. So that was a fairly simple, and then they added purgatory. That wasn't there initially. They added that a bit later on, and then they added the baptism. You know, it's all good money, it's all good revenue, right? But by and large, it's a very simple system. But then in modern age, it's become really convoluted, you know, with all this spirituality. Like, it's become convoluted, but it's still very simple. And all there is we as machines, the world of soul, the dimension of soul, and then there is God. God is beyond creation. God creates creation by bringing itself into creation. Basically, you could look at it like the yin yang. So God is everything. There's nothing but God, and then God splits itself into yin and yang. So now you've got God beyond creation and God within creation. God within creation is soul, and then soul, which has all the qualities of God, but not quite, because it's a copy of God beyond creation. Soul creates the third dimension, the universe as we know it, by applying its will, God's will, into every subatomical, vibrational particle, which turns into matter.
Mm-hmm. So
soul is in all matter. So all matter. So God is in the universe. God is in everything. God is in us, but we will call it soul rather than God itself. But it's still God, and so soul. Why does God create soul? So that soul can learn about itself, and it learns about itself through its interaction with us, with the universe. Not just us as human beings, but...
Where does consciousness fit in with that?
There is no such thing as consciousness. What there is integration. So we are, as a human vehicle, as a machine, we have 3 different brains, 3 different centers. And when you have 3 centers operating, by having the 3 legs, the 3 sections, we have self-awareness. We call that self-awareness consciousness. But what we're actually talking about is ego being able to know itself, because it has this 3, it has the mind, the emotions, and the physical body. They're all they're all part of the nervous system of the brain that operate in different ways. It's how the brain gains knowledge about the universe of itself. By having all three together, it learns about itself. And that makes us very egocentric, and it gives us the belief that we are it, that we are the supreme beings of the universe. But there are other modes. However, from our perspective, most human beings do not have all three brains operating all the time. They only have two. So they don't have self-awareness. And you can see that all the time. You know, I've got videos that demonstrate this. Our lack of self-awareness. We're simply machines. We are programmable machines. We need the three machines to gain experience. With the two brains, all we have is knowledge. We can acquire knowledge, but knowledge is meaningless. We need experience. So we need all three working together to gain experience. And it's by all three working together that we then have access to the heart. And that's when the real beingness comes into place, because the heart can now instruct the body.
Just to be clear, the three bodies, you said that two are the knowledge and one is the experience. Which ones are they?
No. Experience is when all three are working together.
Yeah.
Knowledge is when two. The two could be the physical and the emotional. It could be the physical and the mental. It could be the emotional and the mental. Yeah, but just two of them working. And most people have a preference.
Yeah.
So I have a preference for my body and my mind. Shitty mind, to be frank, but nevertheless, that is anything to avoid the emotions, right? Now, there are members of my family who have emotion and mind, but not much awareness of body. Yeah. In a way, we're better off being aware of body, because the body solidifies us onto the present.
Yeah.
If we're not aware of our body, if we're just in mind and emotions, we're all over the place, because our emotions, you know, it's like being in a rough sea. We're backwards and forwards, up and down, yeah, and that's a much worse place. With the body, there's a certain solidity. The problem with being in the body and the mind is that we're a little bit narcissistic. What's the word? Dare I say this word? Because now I'm labeling myself, but it's sociopath. So
has the potential to be narcissistic and sociopathic.
Yeah. Well, no, I was very sociopathic for a long part of my life.
Yeah.
Well, because I was disconnected. I mean, that's been my journey. Is it better than other journeys? Is it worse than? No, they're just different ways of being in the world.
Yeah.
They're all useful. So we want all three. We want all three to be operating. And the challenge is, it depends. So if you are an emotion and a mental, you got to do a lot of yoga. You know, you got to really connect with your body to have all three working together. Because without all three working together, we are not in reality. We're not experiencing the world as it is. Because we need to be in our bodies to be present. And then we need to be able to extend with our emotions, to extend with our feelings, to extend with our senses, whichever senses we have available to us. So, you know, there are all different ways of getting information from the world. But we want it to be direct information. My sense of smell is terrible. So I'm missing that from my experience of the world. But it doesn't make my experience of reality any less, because I'm missing that element. I still have direct experience, I just don't have direct experience of everything that's possible.
Would you say it's like this though, like a person that's blind, their hearing's always much better, so we compensate?
Yeah, we do. We do compensate, absolutely. and the sense of smell probably is much better. But at the end of the day, we're still only engaging with the world through 5 senses, and then there is a 6th sense. But what we're after is we're after the direct experience. Yes, let us experience the world with all the senses, as long as it's direct experience. But be aware that even with all the 6 senses, we have a very limited perception of the universe. You know, in terms of the frequencies. You know, none of us can see ultraviolet, right? You know,
I have done.
have you?
Yeah, that was one part of my questing, and it hurt. I wasn't ready for it, and I closed my eyes, and it's hurting. It was a UV pink magenta for me. I've had this quite a few times, and
Okay.
it's painful. I've had to open my eyes.
Okay. So you can see a little bit further than most in that sense, but it's still a very narrow spectrum of the possible
Well, it's
energies. Yeah?
so much, isn't there? What we
Yeah.
can't see.
Which is way beyond us, and it will always be beyond, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you
Okay,
were meant-
attain, just, but you know, in the past, I've like, I want to have astral projections. I want guides to come to me. I'm like, no, you've got enough going on in your head, mate. I think you need to be in this body. Get in this body and stay in here. This is where you need to be.
See, that's another myth. The myth of astral projection. We are capable of being anywhere in this universe simply by connecting with our hearts and our higher centers of visualization and kinesthetic sensation. We can be anywhere, but we don't actually live our bodies. We can't live our bodies because it is your ego that's trying to live the body, and the ego is the machine. The machine cannot go anywhere but be the machine. And the soul, which is not at our command, the soul is here to experience in the body. The soul is not going to just suddenly depart. There's plenty of other things out there that would like to be in the body. You know, to live the body is like living your house empty. Squatters are going to get in, but it's not possible anyway. The soul is here from birth till death. It's an attunement which is not easily dislodged. So that's not going to change. And so astral travel in the true sense of the word, as we think of it, is not possible. But it is possible. But it is an experience with our kinesthetic sensation, with our imagination and with our heart. Then the whole universe is available to us if that is where we want to be. Personally, I think there's more than enough in this world to get on with, you know, without going anywhere else. Although I've often tried to connect with the true humans. But Charlie told me, you know, it's never going to happen. Forget it.
I asked this question as well.
Was it enough?
Was that a good end there?
That's a wrap. So, if you enjoy our conversations, please subscribe. It helps to make sure that YouTube offers what we offer more widely out there, and come and join our Telegram channel. Bye for now from me.